The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as I flitted around my modest kitchen, preparing for Jake's arrival. It had been too long since I had seen him, and the anticipation of his visit sent a flutter through my chest. I arranged the flowers he had sent me last week, their cheerful colors brightening up the room that often felt so empty since Richard's passing. I couldn't help but reminisce about the laughter that once echoed through these walls, memories of family dinners where Jake would playfully compete with his cousins for my attention. Will he still want to talk to me? I pondered, a wave of uncertainty washing over me. At 25, Jake was no longer the little boy who would climb onto my lap and listen to my stories. He was a man now, navigating his own challenges, while I was left grappling with the gaping hole that loneliness had carved into my life. I found myself dusting off the old photo albums, flipping through pictures of birthdays and holidays, and I couldn't help but smile. There he was with his bright eyes and impish grin, holding up a trophy he had won in a school soccer tournament. Those were simpler times. Suddenly, the sound of the doorbell jolted me from my thoughts. My heart raced, a mix of excitement and apprehension flooding my senses. I smoothed down my blouse and made my way to the door, taking a moment to collect myself before opening it. As I swung the door open, my breath caught in my throat. There stood Jake, his familiar warmth radiating through the threshold. A bouquet of flowers was held in his hands, and his smile was like a balm to my aching heart. "Hey, Grandma!" he exclaimed, stepping inside and enveloping me in a hug that felt both comforting and electric. I inhaled deeply, the scent of his cologne mingling with the floral bouquet, reminding me of all the times we had shared together. "Jake, look at you, all grown up," I said, pulling back to take a good look at him. He had changed so much, yet he still had that same spark in his eyes. "These are beautiful," I added, gesturing to the flowers. "Thought you could use some color in here. It looks a bit too cozy," he teased, glancing around my living room with a playful smirk. "Cozy or cluttered?" I replied, chuckling softly. "It's just the way I like it. Come on, let's sit down. I've made your favorite pie." We settled at the kitchen table, the familiar comfort of our banter wrapping around us. As Jake devoured a slice of pie, he began to share stories about his life, a job that felt stagnant, a girlfriend who seemed more like a weight than a partner. I listened intently, my heart aching for him. "You deserve someone who makes you happy, you know," I said, my hand instinctively reaching across the table to touch his. "Life is too short to settle." He looked up at me, his expression softening. "Thanks, Grandma. I don't know what to do sometimes." "I get it, sweetie. We all feel lost at times, especially when it comes to love," I replied, feeling a strange stirring in my heart. The connection between us felt deeper than just grandmother and grandson. It was as if we were two souls searching for understanding in a world filled with confusion. As the evening wore on, laughter filled the kitchen, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I didn't feel so alone. Jake's presence was a balm to my weary spirit. We reminisced about the past, and I could see the little boy I had loved so fiercely in the man sitting before me. A wave of nostalgia washed over me, and as I looked into his eyes, I felt a strange sense of longing. It was unsettling, yet undeniably powerful. "Grandma, do you remember that time we built a fort in the living room?" he asked, grinning widely. "How could I forget?" I laughed, my heart swelling with the memory. "You and your cousins turned the entire house upside down. I couldn't find my favorite vase for days." "Yes, and you were so mad," he chuckled, his laughter echoing in the warm kitchen. "Mad? I was just worried you would all break something," I replied playfully, but as I looked at him, the laughter faded slightly, replaced by a different emotion, a connection that felt both thrilling and terrifying. As the evening settled into a comfortable silence, I realized how much I had missed having him around. It was a reminder of the family we once were before grief and distance had crept in. But underneath that warmth, I felt a flicker of something else, something that made me question the boundaries of our relationship. I shook my head, dismissing the thought. After all, he was my grandson. This was just a visit, a brief reprieve from loneliness. And yet, the air between us felt charged, as though we were standing on the brink of something we didn't fully understand. The aroma of the homemade lasagna still lingered in the air as Jake and I settled on the couch, our plates now empty, and our stomachs full. I tucked a loose strand of gray hair behind my ear, trying to shake off the flutter of nerves that danced in my stomach. The soft glow of the television screen flickered against the dim light of the living room, casting gentle shadows around us. I had chosen an old classic, one of the films Richard and I had cherished, filled with romance and nostalgia. Jake nudged me playfully, pulling me from my thoughts. You know, Grandma, you're the only person I'd watch this with. Everyone else thinks it's boring, he joked, a cheeky grin stretching across his face. I chuckled, my heart swelling with affection. Well, they just don't appreciate the classics. You know, back in my day, this was considered top-tier entertainment. Yeah, he teased, rolling his eyes dramatically. But seriously, it's nice to spend time like this. It feels comfortable. His words struck a chord within me. Comfortable. That was exactly how I felt, but there was something more. Something electric crackling in the air between us. As the movie played, I found myself stealing glances at him, memorizing the way his laughter lit up his eyes, the way his carefree spirit seemed to fill every corner of my living room. As the plot thickened on the screen, the scene shifted to a passionate kiss shared between the two leads. I felt my breath hitch, my heart racing, and suddenly the space between us felt charged with an unspoken tension. I turned to Jake, and to my shock, he was already looking at me, his expression unreadable. It was a strange moment, one that seemed to stretch indefinitely. And then, without warning, he leaned in and pressed his lips against mine. Time stopped. The world outside faded away. My mind screamed in shock. But my heart, my heart seemed to recognize a truth I had buried deep within me. I felt warmth spread from my lips to my core, igniting something that had long been dormant. But just as quickly as it began, it ended. We pulled away, our eyes wide, with disbelief. What just happened? I whispered, trying to find my voice amidst the chaos of my thoughts. I'm sorry, Grandma, Jake stammered, his face flushed. I didn't mean, I don't know what came over me. The air was thick with confusion and guilt as we both sat there, stunned. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and a part of me wanted to dismiss it as a mistake. But another part, a part that had been silent for far too long, longed to explore this strange new territory. It's okay, Jake, I finally managed to say, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask. It was unexpected. That's all. He nodded, looking anywhere but at me. The awkwardness hung like a heavy curtain, muffling our usual banter. I could sense his internal struggle, just as I was grappling with my own feelings of guilt and an unexpected thrill. The movie continued to play, but neither of us paid it much attention. Our minds were elsewhere, wrestling with the implications of what had just transpired. Maybe we should just forget it? Jake suggested, his voice low, almost a whisper. Yeah, maybe, I replied, but the truth was I didn't want to forget it. I didn't want to dismiss the flutter that was now a constant companion in my chest. As the credits began to roll, I felt a wave of desire mixed with uncertainty wash over me. The kiss had ignited something I wasn't sure I could extinguish. We both sat in silence, the flickering screen reflecting a myriad of emotions. Let's, go for a walk? Jake proposed, his eyes searching mine for a sign that everything would be all right. Sure, a walk sounds nice, I said, even though my heart was racing with the possibilities of what lay ahead. As we stepped outside, the cool night air brushed against my skin, grounding me in reality. But as we walked side by side, the unspoken tension lingered, wrapping around us like a shroud. I could feel Jake's warmth beside me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt alive, excited, terrified, and utterly vulnerable. The world around us felt both familiar and foreign, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that nothing would ever be the same again. I woke up the next morning, the sunlight spilling through the curtains, casting a warm glow in my bedroom. Yet, despite the beauty of the day, my heart felt heavy with the weight of what had transpired the night before. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind replayed that unexpected kiss. Jake's lips on mine, the warmth, the surprise, the confusion. I shook my head, trying to dispel the thoughts that clung to me like a stubborn fog. Get a grip, Margaret, I whispered to myself, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. He's your grandson. I stood up, smoothing out my nightgown, and took a deep breath. I needed to act normal, to pretend as if nothing had changed. When I made my way to the kitchen, I found Jake already there, pouring himself a cup of coffee. He looked over his shoulder and flashed me that charming smile that had always made my heart flutter. Good morning, Grandma, he beamed, as if nothing had happened between us. I hope you like pancakes. I thought I'd try my hand at cooking this morning. Pancakes sound wonderful, sweetheart, I replied, trying to muster a smile that didn't betray the tumult of emotions swirling inside me. I busied myself with setting the table, my fingers trembling slightly as I placed the plates down. The smell of warm pancakes wafted through the air, and for a moment, I allowed myself to bask in the nostalgia of our shared breakfasts from his childhood. Jake flipped the pancakes with ease, his movements graceful and confident. Remember those camping trips we used to take? He asked suddenly, his eyes lighting up as he flipped another pancake. You made the best pancakes over the campfire. I chuckled, the memory bringing a smile to my face. Only because I was trying to keep you from burning them. You always got so excited about flipping them that you nearly sent them flying. Jake laughed, the sound rich and joyful. Yeah, I was such a little kitchen disaster back then. As we continued to chat over breakfast, I tried to bury the thoughts of last night's kiss deep within me. But every time Jake leaned closer to me, every time our eyes met, I felt a flash of heat rush to my cheeks. I was torn, feeling protective of him, yet grappling with a longing that was entirely inappropriate. After breakfast, Jake suggested we go for a hike. It's such a beautiful day outside. Let's get some fresh air. Sure, that sounds lovely, I replied, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. As we made our way to the door, I felt a pang of anxiety. Would the hike allow us to clear the air, or would it heighten the tension that hung between us like an unspoken secret? The trail was familiar, a place I had walked countless times with Richard. As we hiked, the air was filled with the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves. I took a deep breath, trying to center myself in the moment and focus on Jake. Tell me more about what's going on with you, I prompted, wanting to steer our conversation away from the awkwardness that had marred our previous night. Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. It's just, I feel lost, Grandma. My relationship with Emily has been rocky. I thought we were heading towards something serious, but now I'm not so sure. I felt a surge of protectiveness wash over me. You deserve to be happy, Jake. You shouldn't settle for less than what you want. Yeah, but it's complicated. I care about her, but part of me wonders if we're really meant to be. He looked away, his gaze lost in the distance. Sometimes I think I'm just following the path everyone expects me to take. I stopped walking, letting his words sink in. You have to carve your own path, sweetheart. Don't let anyone dictate what you should do with your life. Follow your heart. He turned to me, his expression earnest. You always know what to say, Grandma. It's like you can see right through me. As we reached a scenic overlook, I felt the beauty of the landscape wash over me. The valley stretched out before us, vibrant and alive. I took a moment to appreciate the view, but my heart raced as I felt Jake standing beside me, our shoulders nearly touching. In that moment of silence, surrounded by nature's splendor, I felt a pull towards him. It was as if the world had faded away, leaving just the two of us. I fought against it, reminding myself of the boundaries that should never be crossed. "Jake," I began, my voice trembling slightly. But he turned to me, his eyes searching mine. "What is it, Grandma?" I swallowed hard, searching for the right words. But in that instant, I realized that the words I wanted to say were tangled in a web of feelings I couldn't untangle. Instead, I took a step back, shaking my head slightly. "Let's just enjoy the view for now." He nodded, but I could see the flicker of confusion in his eyes. We stood there, the tension between us thickening like a fog, as the world around us continued on, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing between a grandmother and her grandson. The evening settled in, wrapping the house in a blanket of warm, dim light. I picked up the phone and dialed Linda's number, my heart racing as I waited for her to pick up. I tried to concentrate on the sound of the ringing, but my mind kept drifting back to the kiss. How soft and unexpected it had been. The memory sent a warm shiver down my spine. Just as I was lost in thought, Linda's voice broke through. "Hey, Mom, how are you?" she asked, her tone light but with an edge of concern that I couldn't quite shake off. "I'm doing well, dear," I replied, forcing a smile that she couldn't see. "Jake and I were just reminiscing about old times. He's such a sweet boy." "Is he? I hope he's treating you well," she said, her voice slightly skeptical. I could sense the weight of her own troubles lurking beneath her words. "I worry about you. It must be hard being alone." I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. It's just different now. "But I'm managing," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Good to hear. I just want you to be happy, Mom." Her voice softened, and I could almost picture her nodding with concern. "Let me know if you need anything. I'm here for you." "I will, sweetheart. Just take care of yourself, too," I urged, sensing the strain in her life with Richard. After we hung up, the air in the room felt heavy. I glanced over at Jake, who was sprawled on the couch, fiddling with a board game. His laughter echoed as he teased me about my lack of gaming skills. I wanted to engage, to push away the heaviness of the phone call, but the earlier kiss loomed between us like an uninvited guest. "Want to play?" he asked, lifting an eyebrow in challenge. "Sure, why not?" I replied, trying to sound enthusiastic. The game began with light-hearted banter, and I found myself falling back into the rhythm of our childhood games. The playful competition reminded me of the endless afternoons we spent together, laughter spilling out into the air. "Prepare to lose, Grandma," he joked, moving his game piece with exaggerated bravado. "Oh, we'll see about that." I shot back, a competitive spirit igniting within me as we played. I noticed how his eyes sparkled with mischief, and it made my heart race in ways I hadn't expected. The laughter felt good, but the underlying tension was palpable, a current that thrummed between us, keeping me on edge. "All right, I'm going to make my move," Jake said, leaning closer, his face just inches from mine. My breath caught as he brushed against my arm. It was innocent enough, but the closeness sent my heart into a frenzy. Suddenly, in an impulsive burst of energy, he playfully shoved my shoulder. "You're going down, Grandma." I retaliated instinctively, pushing him back. "Not if I can help it." The playful scuffle escalated, and before I knew it, we were both laughing, wrestling gently on the couch. But then, in a moment of vulnerability, we both froze, breathless and wide-eyed. Okay, let's call it a draw," I said, trying to regain my composure, but the laughter faded as a different kind of silence enveloped us. Jake's expression softened, and without thinking, I wrapped my arms around him in a tight embrace. It felt comforting yet charged with emotion. I felt his warmth seep into me, and for a heartbeat, it was as if the world outside ceased to exist. "Margaret," he whispered, his voice thick with something I couldn't quite grasp. I pulled away slightly, searching his eyes, my heart pounding. "What are we doing, Jake?" I asked, my voice trembling. He leaned back, his gaze intense. "I don't know, but it feels different, doesn't it?" I nodded slowly, fear creeping in. "It does. It shouldn't, but it does," I admitted, feeling the weight of my own desires clash with the reality of our relationship. The air was charged, our connection deepening, yet the boundaries of family and societal expectations loomed over us like a dark cloud. I feared what this could mean, where this path might lead. "Let's just take it easy, okay?" I suggested, my heart racing. He nodded, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. I could feel the gravity of our situation settle uncomfortably around us. Yet there was a flicker of something more, something I was terrified to explore. I woke up the next morning, sunlight streaming through the window, but the brightness did little to alleviate the heaviness that had settled in my chest. The kiss from Jake lingered in my mind like a haunting melody, one that played over and over, taunting me. I could still feel the warmth of his lips against mine, the way my heart raced in that fleeting moment of unexpected intimacy. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. "Get a grip, Margaret," I muttered to myself, shaking my head. I had to confront this. I couldn't let it fester any longer. Jake was my grandson, and I had to remind myself of that. He was 25. He deserved a life free from any complications I might bring into it. I found him in the living room, sitting on the couch, his eyes glued to the television, but I knew he wasn't really watching. I could see it in his furrowed brow and the way he absent-mindedly toyed with the remote. I approached him, my heart pounding. "Jake," I said softly, hoping to break through whatever thoughts were clouding his mind. He turned to me, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "Hey, Grandma, what's up?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I took a seat across from him, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. "I think we need to talk about last night." The smile faded from his lips, and he sat up straighter, bracing himself. "Oh, about the kiss?" "Yes," I replied, feeling a flush creep up my cheeks. "It was unexpected." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I recognized well. "I didn't mean for it to happen. You know, it just happened. The movie and everything." I nodded, but deep down, I felt the tension in the air, a current that connected us beyond mere familial bonds. "But it meant something, didn't it? I could see it in your eyes." He looked away, staring at the blank screen, as if it held all the answers. "It was just a moment, Grandma. A mistake. But was it?" I pressed gently, wanting to peel back the layers of his facade. "You came here to spend time with me, and I thought we were reconnecting." I thought what?" He interrupted, a hint of frustration creeping into his voice. "That we could just ignore what it means, that I could just pretend everything's okay." I was taken aback by his intensity. "I'm not trying to make this complicated, Jake. I'm just trying to understand." He sighed, running his fingers through his hair again. "I don't know, Grandma. I love you, but it's different now. I'm not a kid anymore, and I have these feelings that I don't know how to handle." At that moment, it felt like the world around us faded, leaving just the two of us and the weight of our unspoken emotions. "You're not alone," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've felt lonely for so long. Maybe there's something we can find in each other." Before he could respond, the sound of the front door opening jolted us back to reality. "Mom," Lena called out, her voice echoing through the house. I felt a wave of panic wash over me. "Shit," Jake muttered under his breath, scrambling to compose himself. "Act normal," I whispered, my heart racing. We both straightened up, trying to mask the tension that had just filled the room. Linda walked in, her presence immediately shifting the atmosphere. She looked at us, her brow furrowing slightly. "What are you two up to?" "Just chatting," I replied, forcing a smile. "About the hike we'll go on later." Linda's eyes darted between us, her intuition sharper than I'd given her credit for. "Uh-huh. You both seem deep in conversation." "Just catching up, Mom," Jake said, his voice a bit too casual. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he was bracing himself against her scrutiny. "Right," Linda said, her voice laced with skepticism. "Well, I'm glad you're spending time together." But I could tell she sensed something was off, and it made me uneasy. As she moved to the kitchen to prepare breakfast, I exchanged a glance with Jake. It was a silent acknowledgement that we were caught in a web of emotions we didn't know how to navigate. A part of me wanted to reach out, to bridge the distance that was growing between us, but the reality of our situation loomed heavily over us. "Let's talk later," Jake said quietly, his eyes searching mine, filled with a mix of longing and fear. I nodded, my heart aching at the prospect. Later. But in that moment, I wasn't sure how later would unfold, or what it would mean for us. The kiss, the tension, the unspoken words. It was all hanging in the air like a fragile thread, waiting for someone to pull. As dawn broke, the light filtering through the curtains illuminated the kitchen, casting a warm glow on the coffee pot that gurgled softly. I sat at the table, my hands wrapped tightly around a steaming mug, but the warmth barely reached my heart. Guilt washed over me in waves, each crashing against the shore of my mind, reminding me of the kiss Jake and I shared. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd crossed an unspoken line, one that should never have been approached. "Morning, Grandma." Jake's voice broke through my thoughts as he strolled into the kitchen, his hair tousled and eyes still heavy with sleep. He wore that charming smile that always made my heart flutter, but today it felt like a dagger to my chest. "Good morning, Jake," I managed to reply, my voice barely above a whisper. I stared into my cup, avoiding his gaze, knowing that the conversation we needed to have loomed like a dark cloud over us. Jake poured himself a cup of coffee, and I could sense the anxiety radiating from him. "You okay?" he asked, taking a seat across from me, his brow furrowing in concern. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about last night," I said, my heart racing. The words tumbled out, and I could see the shift in his expression. "About the kiss?" He leaned forward, his eyes searching mine, filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Grandma. It felt right in the moment." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what we were discussing. "But it shouldn't have happened. You're my grandson, and I'm your grandmother. We can't let this, whatever this is, get out of hand." Jake's expression faltered, and I could see the turmoil beneath his surface. "But I've been feeling something for you for a while now." I didn't want to admit it, but it's there. The confession hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. "Jake, this is wrong. We have to think about the family, about your mom. What would she think?" He ran a frustrated hand through his hair. "I don't know, Grandma. I just feel trapped. I'm torn between what my heart wants and what's expected of me. I love you, and I can't pretend otherwise." My heart raced at his admission, an unwanted thrill coursing through me. "You can't say that. You're too young to understand the implications of this. Plus, what about your girlfriend? You need to figure out your life before complicating things further." Jake's eyes darkened, and he leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "You don't get it, do you? My relationship is falling apart. I don't even know if I love her anymore. But there's something about you that makes me feel alive. I can't just ignore that." At that moment, the front door creaked open, and Linda's voice echoed through the house. "Mom? Jake? Are you guys awake?" Just as panic surged through me, I caught Jake's wide eyes, a silent plea to keep things hidden. We both scrambled to compose ourselves. Linda entered the kitchen, her expression shifting from casual to concerned as she took in our tense body language. "What's going on? You both look like you've seen a ghost." "Just having a little chat," I said quickly, forcing a smile that felt false on my lips. But Linda's gaze landed on Jake, and an unmistakable shadow of suspicion crossed her face. "You sure? Because it feels like there's something more here." Before I could respond, she continued, "I was going through some old recordings and stumbled upon something. It was a conversation between you and Dad. Mom. He said something about love being open no matter the age." My heart sank. The recording. I had forgotten about it. The way Richard spoke about love with such fervor, urging us to embrace it without societal constraints. Linda's eyes widened, realization dawning. "Is this what you two have been talking about? Is that why you look so guilty?" Jake and I exchanged a glance, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavily in the air. I felt my chest tighten, caught between wanting to protect our fragile family and the undeniable connection sparking between us. "Linda, it's not what you think," I started, but she cut me off, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. "No, Mom. I need to understand. Is this what Dad wanted for us? For you to fall for Jake?" I felt my heart shatter as I looked at my daughter, the depth of her confusion and pain evident in her eyes. "I never meant for any of this to happen," I whispered, feeling trapped in a web of emotions that threatened to unravel everything I held dear. The three of us stood in that kitchen, the air thick with tension, as we faced the complexity of love, betrayal, and the uncharted territory that lay ahead. In that moment, I realized that our family was on the brink of something monumental, and I couldn't shake the feeling that nothing would ever be the same again.